So welcome everyone. The presentation today was a dream, a vision of Wagan Senior lawman and indigenous elder, Wagan Guburu. And this is a photo of Wagan here at Palm Island. And before he died in September last year, Wagan said to me, Zaf, please tell others about my journey. Tell doctors and nurses about the different ways to treat our people better. Use my story to help others learn about our culture and healing. So my name is Zaf Smith, and I'm an emergency physician here, actually based in Townsville. And I'm here with senior lawman and the eldest son of Wagan Guburu, Kugaman Bunbari. And we're here together to tell you the story of Wagan and his family. So we'll just start. Kugaman Bunbari, do you mind, can you tell us a bit about yourself and about your family?
Yeah, so my name is Kugaman Bunbari. That's my traditional name. My name comes from, traditional name comes from one of my grandfathers from the Ngangkari tribe in the southeast Kimberleys, and sort of going back to law and reaffirming my true identity in that. And I'm also from central Queensland, the Wadja tribe, and also have historical connections to Townsville and Palm Island in North Queensland there. Yep. And that, and yeah.
All right, great. And can you tell us a bit about your father, who was the photo that we saw just before? Your father, Wagan Guburu, and a bit about his indigenous and spiritual background?
Yeah. Dad's from central Queensland, the Wadja tribe, and as part of reviving culture, he's also been part of decolonizing himself from the Western system and coming back into Churkupa law and culture. And so in doing so, he's gone back to his traditional name, which is Wagan Guburu. And Wagan means crow in Wadja language. And Guburu is one of the skin names in the Wadja kinship system. The crow is also his totem, and it is also the tribe's totem as well. So the crow is quite symbolic to the Wadja people and that. And so with the name changes and decolonizing himself is something that is reaffirming himself in law and culture. And that, so reviving law and bringing that into practice on country has been his spiritual journey. He also has historical connections to Townsville and Palm, being born on Palm Island as well. He's been on a spiritual journey since he's been born. His ancestors handpicked him to revive law for Wadja country, and found that his laws and culture was sent to the southeast Kimberleys for safekeeping. And where my mum comes from, a place called Billaluna. Dad was also mentored by one of his cousins in his early 20s, learning about law. And his cousin explained also that his laws has been sent over to his wife's country for safekeeping until his ancestors sent him back there and to learn law and to bring it back to country and to revive Wajja law and that. And so since knowing where my mum comes from the Southeast Kimberleys, we've been traveling back and forth from Townsville to Halls Creek to Billalena in the Kujunka region. And yeah, so that's been part of my dad's and mum and my family's journey in the revival of traditional law and culture for Wajja. So yeah,
Yeah, that was a big part of what your dad would talk about, is bringing the law from Western Australia, bringing it back to the East Coast, and that before colonialism arrived, that those sacred teachings and the law was sent from the East Coast to the West for safekeeping, and part of his journey is to help bring that back to the East Coast. And I think those family connections between the East and the West, that's a big part of this, the kinship system. I've got another slide here, just a bit of a diagram.
The red arrows represent the marriage line. For example, Bunbury male marry Wangu women, and with the blue lines represents from mother to children. For example, again, Bunbury female have Kurugila children, and vice versa, Kurugila female have Bunbury children, and that's vice versa with Guburu and Wangu. But yeah, that's how the Wajja system, kinship system works.
Could you share what the kinship system means to you?
The kinship system, to me, is one of our foundations in our law. It's one of our governing systems. It governs our place in the community and roles, responsibilities, and obligations to one another in the community. It also teaches us our relationships with everyone in the community and how we treat each other, especially what are our roles in ceremony and that. So it governs the activities that happen within the community, and so we see it as our governing system in coming back to Chutkulpa, meaning law. So yeah, it governs us on how we conduct ourselves and how we live, how our lifestyle and that. So yeah.
And I think the kinship system is a big part of healing for your father, having the unity in the family and the different roles that people play in helping each other is all intertwined in that kinship system. Perhaps I can share a bit of a personal story, how the kinship system has affected me, even as a non-Indigenous person. So when I was 16 and I was growing up in Papua New Guinea, we had a family friend who was a member of the Baha'i faith community, and his name is Dr Sirus Naraqi. And this is a picture here on this next slide on the right-hand side there. And he was a professor of medicine at the University of Papua New Guinea. And as a teenager, I asked him what I should do as a career. And it's because of his encouragement to do medicine and his belief in me and mentorship. It's from him that I'm standing here with you in this room. So when I moved to Townsville about 5 years ago, I met Wagan Guburu for the first time at a Baha'i gathering, and we became friends, but we didn't really know how we were connected. And when I told Wagan about the story of Dr. Naraqi and his inspiration for me, Wagan laughed and smiled, and he said to me, "Oh, Zaf, now I know how we are connected." And I said, "What do you mean?" And Wagan said, "I am your older brother." And I was like, "What are you talking about?" So then Wagan shared how 25 years ago he had also met Dr. Naraqi in Sydney, and Dr. Naraqi had become his mentor and played like a cultural father role for him, and taught him many spiritual insights and truths, and influenced Wagan's life from that point onward. So although Dr. Naraqi was Iranian of Persian descent, and I'm a Samoan Kiwi grown up in Papua New Guinea, and Wagan was an Aboriginal elder, through the kinship system, we saw like a deeper connection as cultural and spiritual brothers through Dr. Naraqi. And Wagan actually took me home to his own home and introduced me to his children as Wabura. And Wabura is like a title meaning father. And this is how Kugaman and I, today have grown closer through the kinship system. And so this has really changed the way I perceive the power of indigenous culture at being able to bring people of multiple different ethnicities and different backgrounds, bringing them together and seeing their roles as having a common purpose. And so this little flow chart or family tree just shows, Dr. Naraqi as kind of a common ancestor, if you like, and Wagan and myself as kind of siblings at that level, along with Dr. Naraqi's own children. And then below that would be my children and Kugaman Bunbari as on that same skin group. And so, yeah, it's
because you can see how it works, the kinship system where Ngangkari, Sirus Naraqi is the same skin as me, but also being the skin of my dad's father, and that's you and Dad become two brothers, sons of Dr. Sirus Naraqi, and then Sirus Naraqi is Bunbury, then Dad and you is Guburu, but all the grandchildren also follow back to the grandfather then, and being all the kids being Bunbury then, and that. So you can see in that slide the generation as well, and that,
So I think we've been talking about these connections, these cultural connections to the land and East and West, and also within the families. I'd like to move on to talk a bit about Wagan's physical health conditions and his journey through the hospital system. And this next slide shows some of the conditions he's had. He had type 2 diabetes with involving his eyes and his kidneys. He would have injections into his retinas, every 3 months to help with his vision. He had ischemic heart disease. He had a heart attack and a bypass operation at the age of 40. He developed heart failure, was on lots of medications, and even went on to have kidney failure and was on dialysis at the age of 59, recurring skin infections and septic shock. Your dad had been through pretty much every hospital ward in Townsville, the medical, surgical, rehab, ICU, dialysis, hospital in the home, and of course, where I work through the emergency department. I wonder if you could share, you were his main carer through a lot of those times. What was it like for him living with these chronic medical conditions?
Yeah, with that, having these chronic medical conditions, usually you would see people sort of slow down and take things steady, but with his conditions and that, it never really slowed him down from work. being strongly committed to following through his ancestors' plans, and never slowed down one bit. But it was only when Dad was actually admitted into hospital. Dad also saw that as his ancestors giving a little bit of time for rest, and that although he's ended up in hospital, but we used to growl him and say, "Come on now, you're not a machine." But yeah, he just couldn't stop. Even in the hospital, he would also be on his phone talking business or have his laptop and doing emails. So yeah, from doctors explaining need to take things steady and that, and family growl at the same time. But even in that time, he still had a lot of energy and a lot of purpose that kept him going, and that. So yeah, it didn't really slow him down.
And I think this is a picture of him giving a lecture. Even I think he's actually just on hospital leave. He's got bandages on his legs and arms, and still going strong. But and I think maybe we can talk a little bit about some of the traditional healing methods and things that he used while he was in hospital. This is just a little list of things. Perhaps you could touch on those.
Yeah. So your dad, during hospital and being home, still being treated by hospital. Dad had access to bush medicine. One of the main bush medicine is Gumbi, and it's a leaf that you boil to help clean your system out. Also loved the sunlight. The sun and the water sort of helped recharge him. He used to face his back to the sun, so he explained that, I want to recharge my solar panel here and that.
That's
so
right.
to get a bit of energy and warmth and that. But yeah, also, like having some traditional foods and that. Family would cook, fish and that, and another sister of mine would cook lovely fish, island fish style, and that, and yes, and also having one of his favorite is sushi, and that. So, but yeah, also reconnecting, getting visitors from family, and going out for a visit from the hospital to family that pick his spirit up, joking around with his brothers and cousins, and that really lifted him. And that, and every time I visited Dad, even though I've been away and then come back again and visit, his whole energy would pick up, and that, and the nurses would recognize from a low state to a very high state when I visited, and that. So having that, and just having that sort of holistic type of healing, especially trying to have full access to that while you're admitted at the same time.
Yeah, full access to having family around. And one of the things for pain, because he suffered quite a lot of pain in his legs, neuropathic pain from his diabetes and
that's right.
His poor circulation. But he would have massage, wouldn't he? Different family members would massage his legs, and I remember it helped him reduce the tablet painkillers he was on by having the massage kind of every day, and he'd kind of just like roll his eyes back and say, "Oh yeah, this is good." Getting his legs massaged. And I think there's a picture here now of him in the renal unit in the wheelchair there. And there was one admission where Wagan was unable to walk, and he had the rheumatologists, the orthopedics team, physiotherapists, and we couldn't really work out why he couldn't walk. He had a normal MRI, normal blood tests, and they were thinking maybe it's an autoimmune muscle problem. But then something happened, and kind of the next couple of days he was able to walk. Can you share about what happened during that experience?
Yeah. So there's a story that Dad explained to me that one of the doctors in the hospital was explaining to him that you know, from the results, bloods and stuff like that, that the doctor was explaining that that he needed to start looking for a wheelchair, and explained that be looking to be in a wheelchair all his life from that point. And even though it was still also hard for him to walk as well on that day, but because he's got access to also to spiritual healers, what they call Ngangkari, or in our language, my mum's side we say Marbran. Yeah, he's able to get access and get looked over and get fixed, and so yeah, got that done. And one day he had to go in for a eye appointment at the hospital, and he happened across the path of the same doctor explaining that he needed to have a wheelchair all his life. And Dad's walking past him and grinning at the same time, and this doctor had this expression of disbelief and just couldn't believe that he was walking, like as if that conversation didn't happen. And Dad just sort of grinned and looked at him and kept walking by. And he came home and he explained that to me. I was thinking, yeah, that's strong, that spiritual healing, shock people,
And I think there's a slide here. The next slide talks about traditional ways of healing, the Ngangkari or the Marbran healers, and your dad really believed in that ability of these healers to lift his spirit, to motivate him. He was suffering, had a lot of stress, when he was not feeling well, and it helped clear his head and make him feel, feel uplifted. And there's a couple of quotes I'd like to read from some of these healers. It says in this article, we do not directly treat drug addiction or other diseases such as diabetes that they say were unknown in indigenous communities before European settlement brought new social problems and diets high in processed sugar and flour. But we will treat people suffering from mental distress or physical conditions such as injuries, muscular diseases, and issues around pregnancy. So it's kind of saying, there's specific conditions that these healers can work very well in, but they clearly say they don't treat things like diabetes or drug problems that were problems introduced after colonization, but a very, can address things to do with muscular pain, muscular injuries, mental distress. And this is part of the belief that spirit is the core component of the human body, and that these treatments, these are cultural treatments, a cultural experience rather than medical interventions. And I think, so I think I'd like to ask this question to the audience and I guess to the group. Can traditional healers become integrated into the hospital system? Can traditional healers work alongside doctors in a hospital setting to provide culturally appropriate care to particularly indigenous peoples? And when I've asked this question to other work colleagues, the answer is no. But I'd like to challenge that. And we can see on the next slide, there's a story about traditional healers in Royal Adelaide Hospital. Ngangkari is working in the wards already. And this is from, I think, 2018. And it says, I can help with pain. I can help people with pain in their heads. So many young people here are in pain, mental pain. And another slide from Lyell McEwen Hospital, also in Adelaide. This is a quote from Simon Jenkins, one of the ED consultants there, saying, I believed, and this is talking about Ngangkari traditional healers, I believed it would encourage more Aboriginal people to seek medical treatment because they would know they could also access Ngangkari healing. If you don't address the spirit of the Aboriginal people in the healing process, then they're far less likely to engage in the healthcare system. And I think we're coming towards the end here. In May this year, ASEM, Australian College of Emergency Medicine, released its new Reconciliation Action Plan. And in it, it actually references a study, Black Wounds, White Stitches. And it mentions that traditional healers are listed as part of a new discipline or a new workforce, providing training to these new practitioners in a new discipline called social emergency care. So I think that's a really exciting space to see how we can move forward and try to bring these two aspects of healing together in one place. So I just want to end here on the last slide, Kugaman, to ask you if your dad, I've said if, but I've crossed out if because I believe he is here in this room with us.
Yeah.
If your dad was here with us now in this room, what would he say to the audience about traditional healing?
Dad always explained in different contexts and can be used in this one, that one set of methodology is not superior over another, but rather complement each other. And that, for example, Western medicine and traditional healing and spiritual healing, they can complement each other. And as you can see, in the example in Adelaide there, or in South Australia, that there is a model there, and that was always one of my questions and thoughts on, having traditional healers and Marbran and that having, being employed, by a hospital, and that, having a pool of, Marbran there, because you're having, a lot of traditional people coming from remote areas into the cities, and that, and only one of the big reasons going into the city for hospital is that a lot of the remote, that sort of the technology, where the city has more of that technology, and so it, I guess also being recognized as well as doctors, because our Ngangkaris and Marbran, they've been being our doctors from, for a long time, and that, before settlement, and they've been our doctors, and that, and why should they not be recognized as doctors in today, and that, so, but as you can see in South Australia, that is happening, and I guess Dad would also encourage other places, other hospitals where they have a high rate of indigenous people coming in, and asking them, giving them that choice if they want access to spiritual or traditional healing as well, and I reckon it's their right to do so as well, but yeah.
Well, Kugaman, thank you for sharing some of those insights and that life journey of your father, and really appreciate the time that you've spent to share that with myself, and opening your family, letting me in to learn these different experiences. So thank you again for sharing today with the rest of the audience.
No, thank you for having me, and that's part of our responsibility in sharing and teaching as part of revival of traditional law and culture, and that's as it is responsibilities there, as law people, teaching and that,
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.